Wait, did we just grow a company from 60 people to 200 people in 8 months? I play I'm the Plug by Drake and Future.
You just put it on repeat?
2 times in 6 minutes.
So then you time yourself.
So I put it on 10. And I know once it gets to Drake, it's 1.5 minutes. So I'm like, boom, 1.5 minutes. I'll sing his part in my head. I'll forget I'm running. 3 minutes when it ends. Do it again. I just got to make it one more time. And yo, at the end of it, I'm like, really on the plug.
Oh my God.
Got it.
All right, we're just going to have to intro with that then. So to everybody listening, I got my boy Josh right here, Josh Encarnacion. We were just talking about how he's been running under 6 minute miles. I don't know how the hell he does it. How much you weigh right now?
239.
239 running.
239
What's your mile at right now?
5 minutes and 43 seconds.
How did you even get it?
Man, honestly, high school football just allows you to develop so much mental toughness. And so when you set your mind to a goal, you think less about the pain and sacrifices and more about the pleasure of having done it.
Yeah.
And the whole time that's holding me through. And that was from back then. And I used to run a mile in 4 minutes and 59 seconds in college. And that was after having lost like 60 pounds in 3 months when I stopped being a lineman.
Wow.
So then I just take those same principles and try to get back in shape today because, you know, we're washed up.
Damn, if this is the intro to the podcast, this is gonna be good. I like it already. Cool, man. So thank you again for making the time for me. I just literally just got off the plane like 45 minutes ago, and you got to show me the new office. It's crazy to see the company grow since what was that? 2015.
2015. Pleasure to have you back. I mean, I can't believe you just jumped off the plane and right into it.
Yeah,
that's the ish style.
That's the way we do it. So for the listeners out there, I would love for you to do kind of just an overview of what it is that you do here and what Outco is, and then we'll dig into more of your story.
Yeah, so Outco, short for outcomes-based learning. We're a company that's predicated on providing job-seeking software engineers with the computer science fundamentals they need to pass technical interviews, but also supplement with the social, emotional, behavioral training. So that way they're having those engagements with their recruiters that get them over the line.
Got it.
I mean, everything from redoing their resume to negotiating an extra $10,000 to $15,000 after they secure an offer. Yeah. That happens here. And we follow this like very dojo type of training model, which is you learn by doing, right? So when you walk in 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. and you're in our classroom that happens Monday through Thursday, the number of repetitions you're getting in any one scenario, whether it's phone screening, whiteboarding, negotiating, presenting, maybe even writing an email to a recruiter, you're getting that 6 to 8 months job search experience in 4 weeks.
Yeah. Damn.
So at the end of 4 weeks,
boot camp, like job hunting, right?
It's like a finishing school.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the coding boot camps, they end up feeding our program because their grads want a job. And we're like, hey, the only thing we want is that outcome. That's why we're Outco, right? We want you to get a job. We don't care if you learn a new skill. We don't care if you learn an old skill. What we want is to see the learning applied in real life to change behavior and change your life.
Yeah. And what are the kinds of people that come to Outco? What do their backgrounds look like?
This is actually the number one question we get all the time because you have software engineers at all different levels from all different backgrounds, all different parts of the world, right? We have computer science graduates, right? So fresh college grads that are looking for their first job. We have coding bootcamp grads, whether they're no years of experience to 10 years of experience and they just transitioned into the world of software engineering. But we also have 10 years of experience in the field and they're saying to themselves, look, when I joined the tech industry, when I had my first software engineering job, we weren't solving any of these problems. Yeah. And on top of that, I don't need to know this stuff because I'll just Google search it. But I just interviewed for Airbnb and they rejected me because I didn't know how to do a linked list traversal, or I didn't know how to do big O notation,
Yeah.
which is all, to me, I call it the matrix, but computer science fundamentals. Like, that's not my expertise.
Yeah.
I just know that engineers need to understand this to get past the interview process.
Cool. So that's actually a good point that you said. The whole thing about the matrix is you say that all the time. So what is it that you do here at Outco? You're not an engineer yourself or by trade, or you didn't go to software engineering school or anything like that. So what do you do here?
So let's reframe kind of like where I'm allowed to thrive in this space. My undergrad, I did 2 years of general engineering, then 2 years of HR.
Okay.
And Google was my first job out of college. They saw that as, wow, this is a technically minded, emotionally intelligent person. And so harping on the fact that most engineers have struggles with being social. Right? I mean, it's not for nothing, but they just don't have the capacity to pour into people because they're in this matrix. They're in this other world and they have to learn the rules. So it's not that they're short, curt, rude, angry, jerk, whatever. And we've heard all those terms. Yeah. It's the fact that all their time is spent solving these problems that are complex and abstract and in another world. My job is to pull them back to reality. So when I see an engineer looking at another human being the way that you would after staring at a screen for 8 hours, I'm like, hey, snap back. Listen, when you look at someone, you should probably like have a level of respect. Yeah. It goes from that depth to the more complicated things, which is you're interviewing, ask the person what problems they're looking to solve. Think outside of yourself, right? If you're nervous, it's probably because you're overthinking your experience, right? There is a place to talk about imposter syndrome, but there's also, hey, take the onus off yourself and empathize. Yeah. Let's get back to human relations.
That was a really good response. Thank you for that. Next, what I'd like to do is get to like the beginning of your story. So like, where are you from? What was like growing up like for you?
Yeah, born in Manhattan, New York, Presbyterian hospital where a majority of Dominican Americans are born. I actually don't know Manhattan well because shortly after, my mom moved us to Lawrence, Massachusetts, another like mini DR in the world. And I spent summers in Brooklyn, Flatbush, Gates Avenue, Bushwick, Gates Avenue. And from that time in Lawrence, New York, right, like I got firsthand experience in what it's like being born into poverty and being born in a world that you're not necessarily included in or you're excluded from if you're talking about dominant society, right? Like the first time I ever met an Asian person, I was in 8th grade, right? For as long as I can remember, you know, you would talk about white people as the other. Yeah. So when I got to college, which was off the sheer determination of my mom wanting to see us succeed, this is a woman that had me at 16 years old, my sister at 19, then goes on from 20 to 30 to secure 2 master's degrees in a house. So we're talking about going from project housing to a 2-story house in a matter of 10 years. The way that has wired my brain is that anything is possible. Yeah. And growth is just a matter of making the choice. But at the same time, I've never forgotten the fact that there is systemic oppression. And so my roadblocks are different than yours based off the color of my skin. My roadblocks are different than yours based off my socioeconomic upbringing. My roadblocks are different than yours based off my gender. Yeah. Based off my sexual orientation, based off whatever it is that dominant society looks and deems as different. But to get back to your question, my mom goes on and she's on this heroic path. I mean, she was nominated as one of the United States 50 Women of Triumph in 2003. She was Miss Massachusetts. That was my role model. She was my mom and my dad. Yeah. So my dad got deported when I was 9 years old. Drug dealer in New York, right? And due to his circumstances, trying to provide for his family, he had to take on that hustler ambition and didn't have legal status. What was available to him? The streets. But him being sent away made it hard for our family to have to think about what security means to us. And honestly, it just made me and my sister and my mom a lot closer. I go off to college at UMass Dartmouth. It's the first time I'm in a predominantly white institution. So 76% white. And in my mind, I'm still acting like I'm in the checks. And it was like a hard reality check because
people start treating you different.
Yeah. And, you learn what code switching is.
Very quickly.
You also learn what it's like to be other just before you even speak. And so some of the mental gymnastics that was brought on from those experiences really allowed me to thrive in tech, because going from UMass Dartmouth to Google, where you go from 76% white to 96% white, and they're releasing diversity reports on the fact that they only have such and such black people, brown people. You're like, wait, what? You go to unconscious bias training and somebody's like, oh yeah, I rejected that person because their last name was long. Like, my last name's Encarnacion. What do you mean? Trigger. Right? But you try your best to hold yourself because you learned oh, this is your world. I'm just a visitor. But I never quit because I watched my mom push through everything.
Yeah.
She was abused in all directions and she never gave up. And so you asked me what my upbringing did for me today and where I came from. I mean, I'll never be able to forget what that was, to not have food to eat, to come home and see cockroaches all over the sink, to be afraid to walk outside because there was gang members, drug dealers, whatever it may be, to then realizing your dad is one of those people. It's like, whoa.
You're like, my bad.
Yeah. So you start to have a sensitivity for the world because you realize there is no good and bad. It's just different. And every situation has a root to it.
Yeah.
Right. My dad's situation was brought on by the oppression of the United States for immigrants. But beyond that, due to the colorism that we experience here. So every time I come to work, right, I'm here in San Francisco, I'm acutely aware of who's around me.
Yeah.
Not in a heightened paranoid sense, but in paying homage to my upbringing.
I hear that. Thank you for sharing. I'd love to learn more about maybe like high school and college. What did you get involved in? What, like, any sports? I know you play football, but anything else? These types of questions are super powerful because they help better understand like what's shaped you. Like you literally just mentioned, like football is one of those things that it gave you the mental strength that you can now apply to in different parts of your life. You can take that same mentality, whether it's a project, whether it's something you're trying to achieve, and just go at it, so.
Yeah, high school was football in the fall, weightlifting in the winter. I never got into wrestling. Gotta stay big. And honestly, that's where you just build a lot of camaraderie as a team for the football team. And then track in the spring. I did baseball my first 2 years. Being Dominican, that was mandatory. But then I realized I didn't want to be a baseball player. My mom was heartbroken.
You just did it because you were told.
I just did it because I was told. I did it because I was comfortable. I was on the varsity team my sophomore year, and my mom was like, Papa, you gonna throw away your dreams? And I'm like, Ma, I'm a football player. I'm gonna be a star quarterback. I was a lineman.
That was it.
You know what I mean? But beyond that, I mean, I don't remember my studies as much in high school. I think I was highly disengaged. I probably graduated high school with a 2.1 GPA.
Wow.
But
how did you make the college?
I got in through a program that's for underrepresented, underprivileged, under-resourced students. College Now at UMass Dartmouth.
College Now? That's what it's called?
And they harped on folks with extracurriculars. I also did AV Club, so I was like the host of our morning show for the entire high school.
Of course you were.
And
the personality.
Exactly. And
put this guy on the mic and the TV.
Listen, 8 a.m. and I'm like, good morning. And everybody's like, oh, here goes Josh, shut up. But yeah,
so college, you're super active, really involved. Yeah.
Really involved, and honestly, the hidden talent there that I've only learned to recognize now. The only class that I think I really always excelled in was most of my math classes. I had a double block geometry class that my math teacher was beyond the point of understanding of why I was in, because it was like a remedial class supposedly, but I was like in there sleeping, getting an A, and then writing. So my English teachers was always like, I don't know what you do at night, but like keep writing.
You just write in your sleep.
And they were just like, be healthy though. Like your imagination is off the wall. And they nurtured that. In college, it translated to playing freshman year football. But then after that, I jumped into being a residence assistant, a tour guide, orientation leader. I did student trustee, senior class president, jumped into almost like any activity that involved groups of people. And I was able to just build community for my campus using those artistic skills and those organization skills, math skills.
It's like a thread of people throughout your life. It's like sports, camaraderie of people, college, the things you were involved with had to do with people. And now, like your day to day is helping people grow. It's pretty awesome.
And the word that sticks out the most, and honestly, a lot of what my research is in nowadays, is leadership development. So much so that this weekend, the leadership team here at Outco, we're going through executive coaching. Our executive coach is sitting in the other room. Our executive coach is the Associate Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs at UMass Dartmouth.
What?
This person basically raised me in college because I would be in their office every day, either because I was in trouble from throwing too many big parties, or because I was the only person that would read the books in his leadership class. And he was so confused with me.
Like, why are you so opposites?
He had no choice.
You're a bad kid, but you're a good kid.
He's like, you go from extreme to extreme, and I mean, I'm a Gemini, so it makes sense.
Oh my God. Here you go with all that horoscope stuff. Get out of here.
I don't believe in all that much, but I definitely see the beauty in being able to go from one extreme to the other and respect it.
I think I'm an extremist too, so that's probably why we get along so well.
Definitely.
Cool, man. So that's pretty good background of kind of like your upbringing. Now I'd love to learn about how did you get to Google? Like you kind of graduated high school with a 2.1, made it to college, got super involved, really good at writing, and how did you make it to Google?
Yeah, so I get into the College Now program at UMass Dartmouth, and there my major is engineering, right? So
mechanical or just software?
General, right? I think I was trying to lean towards civil, but at that point, I mean, you're talking about taking like Calc 4 classes, right? And my mom, being like a Dominican mom, right? She's like, you're gonna be an engineer. Like either you're an engineer, a lawyer, or a doctor from the Caribbean, right? In the US. Yep. And so mine was engineering, and I hated it. I loved my engineering classes because of the fact that I had super smart people around me, but I was always the product manager. I was always the presenter. I was always the person relaying the information. Mm-hmm. And that piqued my interest into understanding communications at a deeper level. Yeah. And that was why my leadership classes with David Millstone, our executive coach today,
guy sitting over there,
made a lot of sense. Right? Because I was like, hey, I want to know what it is. What's the psychology of getting people to understand these concepts? And why is it that I can sit in an engineering class, follow along, but then I go talk to my boys and they're like, I don't know what none of that matrix shit is. And I was trying to bridge the gap, right? The emotional intelligence with the IQ without being alienated. He asked me the question, well, if this is what you're interested in, what degree do you want to finish? Yeah. And that's when human resources became a thought for me.
This is what year in college?
Sophomore.
Second year?
End of my sophomore year.
Into junior year when people are starting to think of like kind of like post-grad type stuff.
Post-grad stuff. Yeah. And so I switched into the School of Business. The Dean of Engineering is highly upset with me because I'm probably one of the only brown men in the program. And he's like, what are you doing? You're going to like end up with a job making $100,000 out of college. It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. The Dean of Business is like, come on down, you know what I mean? And so
see the potential here.
I signed up, and I remember my first class with Paul Bagdayan, Organizational Development 101. He puts on the board, if you get an internship this summer, you don't have to take the rest of this class. And I was like, bet. So I went to the career fair.
Say no more.
Say no more. I went to the career fair that they had organized, and I was like, I just need an internship. I don't care where. I ended up at State Street in Boston. They do financial holdings. Mm-hmm. They're a bank, and they're a big employer in Boston. I'm an hour south of Boston at this point. I got a global HR intern role. What that meant was I did all the paperwork for the global HR team.
And you sending their stuff, and you're like,
hated it. I did recruiting coordination work, which was probably the most exciting work for my internship. The rest of it was filing papers in a real file cabinet. I mean, I got written up for wearing green socks in the office ish. Yeah.
Was that stiff?
I had to wear a suit on the train when it was 110 degrees outside. And because it was sweaty, they told me to go air out outside.
Because you were all musty?
Yeah. And it was one of those offices where everything was gray. Like gray cubicle walls. Like I had to schedule a meeting to talk to someone. I mean, like I couldn't go over my shoulder and talk to people. And there was no internet access. So in my mind, I said, if this is what work is, I don't want a job. And they gave me this internship project, capstone. My internship capstone was how to design a better internship for other interns. I shit you not. Like my manager.
You're hating your life.
And I'm like, oh my God, if you're not taking advantage of me, I don't know what this is. But they're paying me $15 an hour. I was rich at that point. Yeah. And I was staying at my then girlfriend's extra room. So I'm in Boston, 21 years old, getting $15 an hour, cashing out, sleeping at my desk, basically. But the moment that she asked me about doing that internship, I was like, wait, so you mean to tell me I can present to you on how this should be?
Yeah.
Done.
Instead of actually wasting my life doing it. Yeah.
Done. Got you. Say less. And I started tweeting at technical recruiters in the Bay Area. Facebook, Twitter.
This is what, LinkedIn. 2011, 12?
2013 summer. Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, everybody. No one's responding. No one's responding.
You were just typing like recruiter, LinkedIn, and try to find them?
I was on Twitter writing recruiter, Facebook, click. And I'd see a Facebook recruiter saying, if you want to talk about internships, hit me up. And I was like, in their DMs, hey, I want to talk about internships. Pick up the phone because there's no internet access on the computer. Yeah. So I'm doing this off my phone. Yeah. Mind you, this is the part where they got completely confused because they're like, how do you have access to people in California, let alone like people across the street? Yeah. And so I connected with the Google recruiter, Victor Scotti, Anthony Victor Scotti. He's a program manager right now for diversity programs at Google. Oh. And I was like, look, I don't really know how to go about the application process. And he was like, oh, you're really about this. Like, he felt the energy because he was like, how old are you? And I'm like, 21. He's like, and you're doing this, like, with every company? Yeah. He's like, send me a resume. And then
he saw the hustle.
He saw the hustle. Yeah. He helped fix it up. We text every day for, like, the whole summer. Uh-huh. He really was one of my first mentors in tech. And, like, every year I text him on his birthday, like, yo, thank you so much for providing me with an opportunity. And he referred me to Selma, a recruiter at Google. And she interviewed me. I got turned down. But then she called me back a month later. This new opportunity turned up. So June 2013, my initial engagement with Google, I get an offer January 2014.
So 6-7 months?
7 months through the process. But in the meantime, I'm at State Street. Like, listen, your internship should have slides. It should have sushi. It should have, like, parties. There should be internet access. And also I'm giving them, like, corporate engagement strategies to make their interns want to convert full time.
Oh, the company asked you how to make the internship more, like, valuable, basically, right?
Yep.
I thought it was a school that asked you.
Nope.
Okay.
State Street asked me to design an internship program for them, and I went in. Basically, I just followed I think at that point, Glassdoor had released something like the top internship experiences. Yeah. And I just copy-pasted that entire article's flow into a deck and said, hey, head of talent acquisition, like, this is how it should feel. Yeah. Right now, I'm getting written up for wearing green socks, and, like, no one talks to me. And I have ideas, but you have no reason for me to even speak. Yeah. So what's going on? Then they offered me a full-time job. And I was like, no. They were like, what are you going to do? How are you going to find a job? Like, where are you going to go? This is like the best opportunity you have. I was like, I'm going to go work for Google. So I'll see you guys. Never. Maybe like 2 years later, one of the recruiters on that team actually hit me up looking for a job at Google.
Really?
On record, I guess, but they probably will never see this podcast.
Damn.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, I'm salty, I'm petty about the experience because in my mind, I was like, wow, young, ambitious me just wanted to help State Street.
Yeah.
and they were pushing me away.
It's not like you were being malicious or anything. You literally just wanted to like make, at least if not your experience, the future experience of internships better, you know?
But they fueled me, right?
Yeah.
They gave me a platform to reach out to Google.
Yeah, because if you would have loved it there, then you would have never reached out to Google.
I still to this day have my feelings about it because I was a diehard Massachusetts person.
Yeah.
I still am. I just came back from living over there 2 months ago. And in my mind, I realized like the reason why talent gets pushed around the world the way that it does is because there's a lot of fear in the management layers that have direct impact on the future of their company. If today I'm telling you I'm managing a startup that I helped build, what could I have done for that company if they just gave me an opportunity to share what my thoughts were?
Yeah.
It's like right in front of them. They don't know how to tap into it.
Definitely. Yeah, true.
But yeah, so I get the job offer for Google, and then I moved across the country. And I mean, that's how we ended up meeting.
Yeah,
right?
That's true. A couple of years after that.
Yeah, and again, like, keep in mind, college was the first predominantly white institution that I had to operate in. So when I got here, I was so raw, and you knew that.
Yeah.
Because I just had no training. I had no socialization. And honestly, I'm actually proud of the fact that I didn't, because what I think about it as now in hindsight was that I never assimilated. Like, I'm still so much me that people are kind of like beyond themselves with the fact that I can act the way that I do and be in the spaces I'm in.
Speak your mind, yeah.
Yeah, and I think some of it is privilege and some lights. Some people are like, yeah, that's because, you know, you got lucky. And I'm like, yeah, I did get lucky, but also I busted my ass while I was in that internship. Before that, in college, I graduated from that 2.1 GPA in high school, 3.69 in college, 4.0 in my major.
A lot of people tend to overlook those types of things too. They look at you now and they're like, yeah, you're a person of color, you're doing well now, worked at Google, head of this, doing that. But they don't look at like, oh, he managed 3 jobs playing sports, did this, did that. Got good grades, busted his ass, did the internships.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, I'm someone that's very unabashed at talking about the, again, inequalities and injustices of the world. Like, colorism plays into a role, right? Yeah, I'm a light-skinned Black Hispanic dude. So what does that mean in terms of how companies receive me, right? My mom having 2 master's degrees, right? While she was going through her like psychology, like master's level psychology 101 classes, I'm sitting there asking questions because I had to go with her. Mm-hmm. She didn't have a babysitter. That definitely impacted me.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Like that extra boost education, right?
Come on. And just the mental model of having a woman in my life that's so nurturing, so emotionally intelligent, but also so driven.
Yeah.
You ask anybody who I am today, I'm literally her, but a man. And now me and my mom have honest conversations like, how does that leverage me in the world? Well, everything in your spirit, but I carry it in a vehicle that's designed to be in this world, right? We live in a patriarchal society. So I carry my mom's spirit with me, but other men are like, what's up, bro? Or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
White dudes in the office that are like, hey, man. And it's like, why didn't you talk to the woman that was sitting right next to you?
Yeah.
And I have to be like, you know, I'm constantly towing the line between inappropriality. That's actually the name of a podcast from my hometown.
Really?
Inappropriality and being someone that educates folks. I think this learning and development field has allowed me to show people something new. And then the moment they're like, this is unsafe, I'm like, but you're learning.
Yeah. Pushing the button slowly. So when I first met you in 2014, you were working at Earnest, right? Was that Earnest at the time?
Yep.
Yeah.
2015, yep.
2015. Why did you transition from like going to the big company Google? It's like that one company where at the time, I think it was the #1 company to work for. Like, why did you transition out? Earnest at the time was a really small company, and I think you might have gone somewhere else between the two, but I don't remember.
So it was Google to Earnest, Earnest to Outco to help start it, Outco to Uber, Uber to Simply Business in Boston, back at Outco. Google was great. I cannot deny that my experience was one that really shaped the rest of my career and probably always. So I can't take that away from them because I make a joke of this, but it's the truth. They would have professional and personal development classes, right? And like you're encouraged to take them. I took like 96 in like 8 months.
Damn.
But I mean, I think that's exactly what you would do.
Yeah.
Just take advantage of all the
I mean,
learning.
when I was it's not about me, but when I was at LinkedIn, at the time I was doing events. I think I did events for like 2 or 3 years. And I mean, I listened to all the speaker series, all the executives. Like I was there to plan the event for the interns, but I was listening, taking my notes, like taking advantage, soaking as much as I could,
I touched down at Google, and I'm part of the staffing services team responsible for Bay Area SWE hiring.
And for the listeners, SWE is
software engineering. Okay. And so our team is tasked with reviewing technical resumes, right? And we're talking about 400, 500, 600 a week. So I'm seeing software engineers from all over the world looking to work at the number one company, and I'm rejecting them or accepting them on the criteria that I've been trained on, right? And then in addition to that, I'm doing phone screens for these software engineers. But you're talking about like a kid from the projects that, went to a public school, that tripped onto a job in California, the number one company in the world, off Twitter. And I'm talking to a 10-year aerospace science engineer that wants to build Loom. And I'm like, so tell me about your background. I'm like, so what coding languages are you working in? So what drives your career? And they're like, well, honestly, like in 2006, I really started diving deep into like
2006. I was in high school.
I was in high school. Like, you know what I mean? And like my whole world was changed in that year because I was learning about all these different technologies that are influencing the world. Mm-hmm. Like people are writing algorithms that are directly impacting my friends every day, and they're like an office away. Yeah. And granted, it's a 46 building campus, so like there's thousands of these people. Yeah. The imposter syndrome that I invited with just by working there came by way of the fact that my direct teammate had a PhD in neuroscience. The hell am I doing there? Yeah. Like, I just graduated with a bachelor's in HR. So it's like, doesn't make any sense, but you're learning through osmosis. And for me, it was interesting because I still wasn't satisfied. I'm at this quote unquote number one place in the world. I'm experiencing a lot of alienation because I don't know one other Dominican at this company. Didn't exist. I later found out there was maybe 4 or 5 actually, like in the Bay Area that worked at Google. Like actually, not like, oh, I think there's 4 or 5. No, there's 5. And I'm talking about of 20,000 people. And we never ran into each other because there's buildings between us. Yeah. So you talk about not being able to see yourself. Like, it's not an illusion. Like, it's the truth.
Physically, you can't.
Yeah, no, there's really nobody like me. And like, and you start to get afraid because you become self-conscious. And it's like, because it'll be the end of work and everybody's like, oh, let's go to this bar. I'm like, I'm trying to dance. Y'all want to dance? And everyone's like, we dance what? And I'm like, bachata. Oh, you don't know what bachata is? I gotta get out of here. All right, I'm gonna head out. You know what I mean? Or like I go to the bar and it's like the first time I ever heard of what an IPA was. I'm like, where's the Henny? They're like, what? Oh, y'all don't drink Henny? I'm gonna head out. Or even just the fact that I was dead broke coming out of college. I see a $60,000 salary as gold, but my first paycheck hasn't hit. Everyone wants to go to this wine bar, and one glass of wine is $18. In my mind, I'm having a full-blown anxiety attack because I'm like, I don't have $18 to spend for wine. I don't know who to tell. Yeah. Immediately, I feel like I'm gonna be weird. And like people are gonna look at me funny. Mind you, I have my sister who was living with me at the time in San Jose, and she's texting me for $10, and I'm freaking out. So I'm like, oh, I don't know who to talk to. I don't know what to do. This isn't fit. $60,000 a year isn't enough. So I'm like, all right, well, I'll just do what I always do. Come up with a bunch of ideas, and like Google has the money, they'll fund it. No one gives a shit about your ideas when you're fresh out of college. And like I could say that with God, like given confidence and honesty because it's the truth, right? Yep. And so then I'm like, okay, I gotta go do this startup thing. And it's like, where does that come from? Yeah. I couldn't even. Where does that come from? I'm like at the time, like I'm 20, 3 maybe. And I'm like, yeah, Google's cool, but I'm gonna go do the startup. And it's like, no, you gotta be somewhat insane.
Yeah, you have to.
You have to. And like the thing is, from the inside, it's like for me, I had so much certainty in like, well, worst case scenario, I just go back home. Like I just go back and like the best I ever knew was at the time leaving Massachusetts, leaving Springfield, Massachusetts to go to California to work at Google.
Yeah, to see like what else there is in the world, not just that home environment, right?
But that was like the bar in terms of like in my mind of what someone could do to show you like how far deep I was in where I was. Mm-hmm. I didn't know anyone else that did that.
Yeah.
I didn't know anyone in the Bay Area at the time. It was literally just me and the world.
Pack a suitcase, come here and figure it out.
And the support wasn't there either because when I graduated, I had $750. My first rent payment was $690 in a basement in San Jose on 7th Street. I can walk you to it if you want, right? And like having $60 to your name, waiting for your first paycheck, and your boys texting you, your mom texting you, your girlfriend texting you, your family texting you, like, hey, did you make it over there? I'm like, yeah, I made it. But there's no windows in this apartment. It's a basement, right? And they're like, anyways, so can you get on the phone really quickly? I'm like, no, I gotta review this packet that like helps me get ready to recruit software engineers. And they're like, what? Stop being weird.
Yeah, nobody gets it.
Trigger. Right? You're by yourself. Like freaking out again.
I know what you mean.
Everyone back home doesn't understand you. You go to the office, no one understands you. You go to the corner store, and now I'm understanding the difference between the East Coast and the West Coast. I wanted to go get a plátano. There's no plantains in San Jose. What do I do?
Yeah.
I'm freaking out again. And that was consistent that whole year. So when someone asked me, like, weren't you afraid going to the startup? I was like, I was already in a state of fear. Like,
do you think that almost helped drive you? Because you're like, well, it can't get much worse than this now. Might as well, like, take this leap of faith and see what happens. Because if it can't get worse, it can only get better, I guess.
It's this, like, heightened state of paranoia, heightened state of chronic stress. I'm so happy later on I introduced therapy. Like, therapy was introduced in my life because to me it was like so much disillusionment, out of touch with reality, that taking that leap of faith almost just felt like the next step.
Yeah.
You know, and it was at the time. I got a pay increase. I went from 60K to 75K, which, to be honest, I was still grossly underpaid. Because I was like part of the first recruiting team. This is where I met Eugene, actually, a close friend of both of us. Yeah. One of your boys from UC Merced, right? Like he's there, like looking at me with, and I got this like these eyes of like I'm on a mission. Eugene's like, yo, what's wrong with you? You know? But I'm like, I gotta make this work. Like, we're gonna hire people. We're gonna hire people, and that spirit, that energy. That's what you want actually in an employee. But I think for us, especially like as non-white males, right? Like, and that's the us I talk about. I'm talking about like people that don't fit the mold for tech startup. Mm-hmm. There's got to be some sensitivity around all the differences we're having to mend and mold into, right? Like,
it's exhausting.
It's exhausting. And then you don't even know who you can trust.
Yeah.
You don't know what feelings to really feel.
You don't know what's being said about you, and
yeah. And then at all times you're like, wait, I am so different. And someone will tell you you're different, and you want to fight them, but you can't. And you know not to. But it's like, why do I have this feeling all the time? How do I come to terms with it? Mm-hmm. You know, some of it is personal security, and some of it's maturity. I honestly believe it's chemical too, hormonal. Like with 23, 24.
Yeah.
But to me, overcoming all of that happened because I was so dead set on this like vision and mission for myself in terms of being able to help people understand this work and this world. The internal struggle was almost part of it. So when you asked me why'd I jump, I was thinking to myself at the time, to be completely frank and honest, Google's already built. I want to build something. And I keep hearing about all these startups in San Francisco. What the hell am I doing in San Jose?
Yeah. To be honest, that's one of the reasons why I moved to Snap. Is like, I know Snap isn't a startup per se, but working at a company like LinkedIn, it's 14,000 people, got acquired by Microsoft. It's like a well-oiled machine, you know. Me coming in, I'm not going to have that much more of an impact that I want to have. But by going smaller, and I didn't go as small as you did, you went to a legit startup. But by going smaller, I now have a lot more opportunity to like have that impact and work on projects that I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to work on if I didn't wait 5 to 8 years of career growth, you know.
You build your projects.
Yeah.
I got an employee 60, and we didn't even have interview training built out.
Built it.
Yeah, and I had just went through Google's interview training, so I had all the foundational knowledge and the experience. We didn't have an events roadmap, so I was like, all right, I'll draw one up. We didn't have, at the time, there was these engineering principles interview process or engineering, I forgot exactly what it was, but it was like the engineering values interview process. And I think I worked with Eugene on this, but they wanted to have all the engineers come together on the social skills they're looking for in addition to the technical skills, so they don't hire these brilliant jerks. Having that conversation in San Francisco in a room full of 20 engineers, building a company that just got $360 million in funding with the product that isn't truly proven yet, right? And then 8 months forward, that same conversation leads to us hiring 140 people. Like, you don't even know what you're doing. You're just doing it. But then at the end, you look back and you go, wait, did we just grow a company from 60 people to 200 people in 8 months? And if you look at our calendar, it's like you're so much into doing, you don't even realize how much of a robot you turned into. I mean, if you were to look at Eugene and I's calendar at that time, we'd have like 15 calls a day.
Damn.
Back to 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 back. So what is your current base salary? What are your expectations? So tell me about yourself. Can you talk to me about, the difference between an inner join and a left join? What's like, you're asking engineering interview questions that you've heard the answer to so many times, you can start to suss out the bullshit instantly. And then you start really realizing what it takes to build a company. You know, I'll answer a question forward for you. The reason why I ended up leaving Earnest, the first time I share this, like on any platform, a senior leader, I won't name any names, said something like, we need people that do a lot with a little to work here. I freaked internally. I was like, do you know what it's like to do a lot with a little? Like, really? Like, we got $360 million. That sounds like a lot. Where I come from,
That's a lot.
That's a lot. You want to hire people that can do a lot with a little?
I know where they're at.
I know where they're at. They're not at Berkeley or Stanford.
Yeah.
I'm not taking anything away from people from Berkeley and Stanford. I think there's some brilliant minds coming from
I hear exactly what you're saying, though.
But I can't forget what we started the podcast with, even, right? Where I came from.
Yeah.
Those are real hustlers.
Yeah.
And all I heard when he said that was, you need hustlers. Here we are.
Yeah. So then you left Earnest, and I kind of want to fill in the gaps from starting Outco to now. If you can kind of like fill in that gap, because I know you started, you left, then came back.
Yeah, so Outco, brainchild of 4 engineers, and a recruiter. So I'm the recruiter. But I joined probably 4 months after the original thought had been formulated.
2015?
Yeah. So I'm at Earnest from June 2015 till February 2016. Right. But I'm moonlighting at Outco starting October. So I'm working my 9 to 5, then I'm going to Outco to teach classes for software engineers that don't have the social skills that they need to get accepted at a tech company. The reason why I'm doing it, I'm broke. Like, I needed cash at the time, and they were willing to pay me for my services. But then when I started really stepping back and realizing, like, oh, you guys are building something the world needs.
Yeah.
They saw me understand it, and then they invited me to join full time. I was waiting for the budget to be available because I don't have the same level of privilege as a lot of people in the Bay to just go and start a company from scratch with no salary.
Be good for a year or two.
They'll be good for a year, 2, 3 years. I'm like, no, I don't have. My mom is broke. I'm broke. Who got money for me? Like, I can afford San Francisco rent on my own. Like, I'm telling you, I'm going through like mental health concerns. Like, who gonna pay for that therapy? Like, I'm freaking out, and I'm trying to make it all work at once. I'm supporting my sister. This is the point where my family thinks I'm rich, and they're asking me for money all the time. My friends back at home still are like, we're still in it together, right? And they're like, what are you doing? Like, why haven't you hit us up? You missed a birthday. You missed another holiday. Where are you? Like, can you be active in the group chat?
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, I'm busy. Like, I'm really actually doing stuff. It's not like I'm just not talking to you. Then you see pictures of me with other people that they don't know. I'm on Instagram with Ish at the Lawrence Park trying to air out. But remember those days we would talk heart to heart about how hard this was. Yeah. I meant every word, and I know you did know that because here we are today. But people are like, "Who's Ish? That's your new friend? That's your better friend?" I'm like, no, he just out here doing the same thing, and he understands what I'm saying. Yeah. But Outco then presents this opportunity to build a company, and they are willing to pay me a salary that I can live off of. Yeah. I take the leap, right? And so I remember even talking to Eugene about it, and he's like, "You're crazy," but like, I went and go and do it anyway. Yeah. And it paid off. We grew the company to a $1.6 million operation in about 9 to 12 months, right? 5 people. And again, all because there is this issue in the market where software engineers, job-seeking software engineers don't have the interview skills. It's not because they are incompetent. It's because interviewing is still an enigma for everyone in the world. Not just software engineers, right? Companies want talent, but they have a hard time assessing the talent. So then talent has a hard time assessing themselves. And then talent has a hard time presenting their skills. And it's a real people problem, right? Emotional intelligence will always be a people problem, right? Like, it's not chalked up to, oh, I'm just trusting my gut. It's like, there are actual ways to perceive a person's behavior, to understand them. There's a way to communicate yourself so other people receive you, right? And there's also the element of confidence. All that's happening at once for me, right? And so there's so much going on. We press on for another year and a half, and the company is then employing roughly like 20, 25 people. A lot of people that I knew from my time here in the Bay Area, but also some of my boys from home, from back east, finally make it over, and we're finding space for them. And we're learning how to grow a business as a young leadership team, right? Wildly inexperienced. Unfortunately, we had a clash with the former CEO. He then had to transition off. And so that hit me deep because him and I had a strong relationship in the sense that he was probably the smartest person I knew at the time. And we worked very hard to build this curriculum that then services the company moving forward. From a technical standpoint, guy's a genius, right? And like, I'm sharpening my skill set on writing curriculum with someone that built a business from nothing. That's giving me kind of like the mental space and the confidence to be like, yo, you actually have valuable skill. This is the first time I start actually realizing like what I'm doing matters. I didn't know that the way I say it with my friends is like, okay to swear. Yeah, it's fine. I'm fucking around shooting triple doubles. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm earning these jobs and these salaries, right? Like, there's no real guidance for me. Yeah. But then at this point it hit, and I'm like, oh, okay, I have to be mindful. Like, I actually have a valuable skill, and this team matters, and this world matters. And what really is happening is I'm earning the space from moving out of survival into thinking like thoughtfully, strategically. That was around the first time. And that's probably when you started really recognizing me mature a lot more. Because now I'm no longer a kid from the projects. Now I'm what you would call seasoned, right? Still very young.
Still very young, yeah. It's actually a really good point. And you're a really good person to ask. For somebody that's listening to this podcast and maybe doesn't work in tech or is not in software engineering, what advice did you have for them to like break into tech? I mean, your methodology was like super extreme, going to Twitter, and like it worked for you. But is there anything else that might work for more people?
Yes. Yes. And the advice that we share forward is, one, becoming aware of the opportunities in tech that don't involve software engineering. Mm-hmm. You can be in the tech ecosystem, in the tech industry, and never write a line of code.
Yeah.
You and I are a prime example of that. And so there's a lot of fear around, oh, I'm not technical enough. Having to deconstruct that for yourself is an effort. But it really comes down to showing yourself like, oh, I can do sales, I can do recruiting, I can do marketing, I can do office management, I can do anything outside of the tech world or the traditional tech world, which is writing software, and still be part of this like rocket ship experience, right? There's plenty of tech companies that are originating right now. Become aware of that, right? And then secondly, being able to the core, communicate what value you add to a team. Because when you start talking to recruiters, what you realize is that they're looking to see what is it that you bring here that's not already here. Mm-hmm. And being able to communicate that requires a lot of finesse. But it starts with that self-awareness. Yeah. It starts with knowing what it is you want to do in the space. People will almost always make a position for you if you are the type of person that can communicate what problems you want to solve. Mm-hmm. But then it's about getting online and finding the platforms for people that actually want to support you on this journey. Jobwell is a great app, right? Connecting young talent to tech jobs. Yeah. You have plenty of podcasts like this one, right? That's actually providing people with the insight, the info, and the awareness. But a majority of these tech companies are hosting events, mixers, because they want you to be part of the space. It's getting out of your comfort zone and actually being in the tech ecosystem before you have a role available. And that might mean doing it after work. That might mean only doing it digitally. That might mean you having to ask your friends in tech to explain to you what are the avenues. It really is just deciding you want to be in the tech industry and doing the research and the homework to figure out what role fits for you. Not being discouraged after you apply to one job. It might take 100 applications. Yeah. But yeah.
That's super helpful. What I try to do with this podcast is definitely like share people's stories and be able to highlight them and on a platform that other people probably wouldn't have heard them, but also like share as much actionable insight and like, honestly, like most people listening probably don't work in tech, so in the back of their mind, they're like, hey, how can I maybe make that jump? Like I live in LA or I live in a hub where there's a couple of tech companies. So that's super helpful. Thank you. Next, I wanted to ask a couple of just like super tactical questions. And I know you're a perfect person to ask them, but like, do you have any piece of feedback that somebody gave you like some time throughout your career, throughout your life that really stuck with you?
Extrapolate. So Damian Hooper Campbell is the chief diversity officer for eBay. Mm-hmm. He told me, like, think about all the experiences you're having. And when you start to try to paint a picture of what this industry is, extrapolate. The word means like project forward. Mm-hmm. So if you know that you're the only brown person in an office and you're listening to all the numbers around diversity, what do you think the next office is going to be like? Extrapolate. If you know that engineers suffer with this, or are suffering through this challenge, this problem, or if you know that marketing teams are having this issue, or if you know that sales teams are having that issue, or if you know that managers are struggling with this program, initiative, task, or this population of folks, if you want to know what the rest of the industry is like, look at the numbers and extrapolate. Mm-hmm. And you'll find the trends, the themes. And that allows you to start thinking systemically versus just in your own personal experience. Yeah. Then you start solving real big problems.
Definitely.
Every team wants to hire a problem solver. The bigger the scale of the problem, the more successful you are in the industry.
The more value you have, yeah.
The more value you add. So that word extrapolate really hit me hard because I was like, wait, what? I think the question I was asking at the time was around like, oh, so what are the numbers for like typical software engineering teams, and how does that play out in the industry? Like, is it majority software engineers in the tech industry? He was like, look, like it says 60 to 70% of all tech startups hire only software engineers at their entry level stage. So if you want to provide a solution, what focus should you have?
Yeah. You're a really one of the most energetic and positive people that I know. But another thing that I try to do here on the podcast is like highlight the good and the bad. So what do you like, how do you overcome when you're having like really shitty days? Like what are things that help keep you grounded and help you when you bounce back?
Family and friends.
Yeah.
Right? Like all of this is exciting, but without my mom, without my sister, without like those deep relationships of people just saying keep going, or I care about you, or I'm here for you, without that community, without the folks that help make you, and don't care about your accolades or your accomplishments or your work, or aren't like obsessed with you because you were on this podcast or you were on that platform, or you got
because you worked at Google,
or you worked at Google,
yeah, exactly.
or you worked at a startup. You got to go around where the love is, and it's something I can't really describe for everybody, but it's a feeling, and you know when it's there.
Mm-hmm. What gives you the most energy? What type of work energizes you?
Reading and writing.
You say true to yourself since like middle school, then elementary, yeah.
Reading and writing, because when you're in a book, there's no rules. You can imagine whatever you want, and that's healthy, but that's also dangerous. But like for me, I'm like, all right, let's go. let's see what this world is like.
On that note, then what's the most impactful book that you've read or checked out, or something that you'd recommend to people? If you had to pick one.
If I had to pick one book, so tough. One book that was so different from my experience in the world, that kind of drew me closer to dominant society, majority society, right? Like white society, but also gave me some core character principles that helped me navigate, was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite.
I think because like...
For people listening, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Mm-hmm. Stephen Covey.
I think the reason why it was so impactful is because the principles are applicable everywhere. Yeah. Seek to understand before you're understood. And it's like, okay, so I can step into this world that I don't know, try to figure it out before I have to feel like they need to figure me out. That's what got me through San Jose and Google.